Welcome to the 5-Beer Plan. I'm Brian, and this is the ongoing saga of an everyman's ale trail. In this episode, I'll pick a new hop to better understand, sit down with Justin Hemminger from the Ohio Craft Brewers Association, and review Simcoe from Evil Twin Brewing. In this segment of Looking for Lupulin, I look at another proprietary New World American hop that almost didn't make it. Developed by Yakima Chief Ranches under the experimental name YCR-014, it was almost shelved when it first released to market in 2000. According to co-creator Jason Perot, in the early 2000s, we had such a hard time moving Simcoe inventory that we nearly gave up on it. It wasn't until it was used in big hoppy beers that it found its place in the world. The name Simcoe pays homage to the French-Canadian heritage of hop growers in the Yakima Valley. In fact, Jason Perot's ancestors migrated from Simcoe County, Ontario, which inspired the name. Simcoe is a complex hop variety. Some sources note that it possesses a wide range of aromas, from passion fruit to pine resin to apricot. Flavor-wise, it delivers a great zesty, citrus, punch-in-the-mouth kind of profile. Of the hop varieties grown in the Pacific Northwest over the past 5 years, Simcoe consistently bounces back and forth between 4th and 5th place. According to Julian Healy's The Hops List, Simcoe has an alpha acid content of 12 to 14% and a beta acid content of 4 to 5%. It retains 70 to 80% of its alpha acid content after 6 months of storage, which is pretty solid. With this alpha-beta acid combination, Simcoe is technically classified as a dual-use hop. For most brewers and drinkers alike, it is certainly more well known for its bittering qualities rather than its aromatic qualities. It is sometimes referred to as Cascade on steroids. It has been bred to be resistant to both powdery mildew and sphaerotheca. Powdery mildew is a well-known threat to hops and leaves a powder-like coating on the leaves. Sphaerotheca is a fungus that behaves similarly, spreading on the top and bottom of the leaves, turning them a grayish-white color. As an added bonus, it produces long chains of spores, allowing it to infect the crop throughout the growing season. Simcoe tends to be paired with other juicy hop varieties in order to balance out the bitterness that is inherent to this hop. BeerMaverick.com notes that Citra, Amarillo, Centennial, Mosaic, Chinook, and Cascade hops are commonly used alongside the Simcoe hop. Not surprisingly, Simcoe is used in pale ales, IPAs, and double IPAs. In fact, the gold standard of double IPAs, Pliny the Elder, includes this hop in its grain bill. If it wasn't for Pliny the Elder, there's a strong possibility that Simcoe would never have got its feet off the ground. Homebrewers may find that Summit or Cascade are acceptable substitutes. Since this is a proprietary hop variety, it is not available to the general public for growing and must be purchased in some other form. In this segment of Homebrew Hijinks, it's time for the next homebrew project. After brewing citrus-forward beers up to now, I needed a new challenge. Initially, I was being clever. I placed an Easter egg at the end of one of my earlier episodes, asking my listeners to message me on Instagram with a suggestion of style to brew. After a few weeks with no input, I enlisted the help of my main bearski Logan to throw a style or two my way. It wasn't long before a text with Dry Irish Stout showed up on my phone. I found a recipe on the internet for intermediate homebrewers that seemed attainable and began my planning. It was even a brew-in-the-bag method, which is what I've been doing. Well, this recipe would turn out to be a bit more of a challenge, as I would soon find out. Listen in to the next few episodes to find out what happens next. Now, it's time for Barstool Banter. This episode will be a little bit different. I opted for a bit more of an educational episode relating to beer and distribution. Justin Hemminger from the Ohio Craft Brewers Association was more than willing to sit down and discuss an important issue that is facing craft brewers at the state level. I met him during a beer fest this summer and just knew I had to get him on the podcast to share how craft beer consumers can be informed and even get involved with this issue. Welcome to Barstool Banter. I'm sitting down with Justin Hemminger from the Ohio Craft Brewers Association in Columbus, Ohio. Justin, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me on the podcast.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So this is a little bit different kind of interview than what I've done in the past, but I think education is definitely one of the best things that I can offer to my listeners. Can you please tell me, first of all, what your role is there at the Ohio Craft Brewers Association?
I'm the deputy director of the Ohio Craft Brewers Association. We're the nonprofit that represents all of Ohio's small and independent breweries, of which there are currently about 430 in the state. Of those, we have about 330 or so are members of the Ohio Craft Brewers Association. My role primarily is, well, I'm the deputy director, so I work directly under our executive director, Mary McDonald, who's been in the role for 10 years. I'm coming up on 7 in January. I was hired in primarily as a communications person to do our social media, our customer outreach, establish our statewide passport app for brewery promotion. About a year or so in, it kind of became obvious that the job was more than just communications. So I asked for a title bump to deputy director, and my boss was like, well, you're the only other employee, so sure, whatever title you want is fine.
So did you get one of those special little deputy stars too that you get to wear around?
Oh man, I actually have one. Believe it or not,
No.
we're not doing video, but yeah, Mary, she bought me a sheriff's badge, or a deputy sheriff's badge, I guess technically.
That is awesome.
So I have been known to wear that occasionally at events when I need to be an authority on something, I guess.
So what brought you to the OCBA?
I mean, I've been a fan of craft beer for a long time, and I was working in corporate communications for a while before making the jump over to OCBA. I worked for a company until about 2012 that they declared bankruptcy, and I was like, this is as good a chance as any to restart career and like start looking into things that I actually want to do. And I was working in hospitality for a little while. I ran a little craft beer bar here in Columbus for a couple of years. And right around the end of my tenure there, the opportunity to come work for OCBA came up. Like I said, they were hiring for a communications person, and put my name in the hat, and they drew it out.
Excellent. So what is the role of the Ohio Craft Brewers Association?
We primarily do 4 things. We are the industry's advocates with the state government for legislation and for regulation. So we maintain a lot of relationships with state lawmakers and with regulators from Division of Liquor Control, Ohio Department of Agriculture, and others that have oversight over the industry. That's one of the bigger things that we do, and something that we do mostly exclusively for the industry. We also do promotional duty for our members, things like our Ohio on Tap passport app, which has about 43,000 users and 330 locations as part of it. That's our biggest marketing and promotional tool for breweries. But we also do the Ohio on Tap magazine. We do a couple of festivals, the Winter Warmer Fest in Cleveland, 6-1 Pour, the Ohio Pint Day, which was happening this week as we record this, the inaugural Ohio on Tap Week, which happened a couple weeks ago. Yeah, so like marketing is another big arm of what we do. We also provide educational, technical resources and business resources for breweries. One huge thing that we do is our annual conference, which is, I think we're coming up on year 8 or year 9 of the conference. We'll be holding that in Toledo, January 16th to 18th. And we usually get about 700 to 800 industry people, brewery owners, employees, representatives from companies that serve the industry. We get some of the regulatory bodies send people. We basically have like 2 days of educational seminars. We do like 4 tracks and about 30 seminars over the course of the 3 days of the conference. We have a trade show with 120 to 150 vendors. It's a pretty big brewers conference as far as what's happening on the state level. It's not anywhere near the size of, like, say, the National Craft Brewers Conference that the Brewers Association puts on. I mean, we do have a lot of high quality seminar programming, and the trade show is pretty large for the size of organization that we are and the size of conference that it is. So we do that, and we have other educational resources and programming that we put on for our brewers, as well as some tools for brewery business. We have some opportunities for them to save money on workers' comp, some other programs that we offer to our members just as trade association business resources. And then the last thing that we do, the 4th bucket of the 4 buckets, is we keep everybody connected. Like, we try to foster a community of collaboration and cooperation amongst our brewers. One thing that we love to say is that fun is one of our core values, and it is. In an industry that's about bringing people together and sharing experiences over a beer, yeah, fun's important. We host quarterly meetings. We have, we do monthly happy hours for our members. Any opportunity we have to get people together and facilitate the furthering of the cooperative culture of the industry, we try to take advantage of that as much as we can.
Wow, that is a lot of stuff that the Ohio Craft Brewers Association does.
We have exactly 3 employees. So it's
Wow.
literally me, my boss, Mary, and our newest hire, Ashley, who's our membership and business development manager, whom we just brought on in February. She's relatively new to the role, but we're a small team. We're efficient, low overhead, keep things on the rails and moving forward.
How old is the Ohio Craft Brewers Association?
It was formed originally in 2008.
Okay.
And at the time, it was run by a volunteer board until 2013 when Mary was hired as the executive director.
Okay. Your annual conference, is that just only open to brewery professionals, or is it open to those from the general public as well, like home brewers such as myself or others?
There's enough technical brewing educational content in there that I think a home brewer would probably find it to be interesting and worthwhile. Obviously, our brewery members have a different rate structure as far as the registration for that goes.
Sure.
We usually have like a really great panel discussion about specific styles of beer and how they're made. Generally, we get award-winning brewers to do that. Last year in Cleveland, we had a panel on lagers that we had 4 Great American Beer Fest and World Beer Cup winning brewers on there talking about how they make their lagers and like what their secrets are. The secrets, quote unquote, right? I mean, that's the beautiful thing about this industry is, everybody's relatively forthcoming with information. We know that the health of this industry, it's judged by the whole, right? So like if you go to a brewery in Ohio and the beer's okay, you don't love it, that makes an impression, right? You can say, well, if this beer isn't very good, then are the other people's beer going to be very good? Especially for people who aren't really into craft beer now. If you're trying to win over new customers and the beers that they're tasting aren't up to par with what we know we're capable of, right? That judgment, that mindset can take over and make it harder for everyone to pick up that new customer. So, sharing that information, getting those resources out like we do for our breweries, we want to give everybody the tools, as many tools as we can to help them make the best beer possible. Because the old rising tide lifts all boats kind of theory totally applies to the craft beer industry.
It's very rare to get a second chance if you turn somebody off. It's definitely a challenge in today's world. At one point, I think everybody's within 10 miles of a craft brewery in the U.S. I mean, that's insane.
Yeah, I don't know how those numbers work in Montana, but they, in Ohio, that's probably not too far from the truth. Last I checked, there were breweries in 71 of Ohio's 88 counties. They're everywhere. And there's such great beer in such far-flung places, too.
Yeah.
It blows me away going to a brewery in a small rural community, and the beer is just fantastic. I love to see it.
And, GABF just happened, and there were some big winners on the national stage that came from Ohio, which is pretty exciting. I think it was Third Eye from Cincinnati won like the overall best brewer of the year, something like that.
Yeah, in their size category.
Yes, and the Nano Brewery, wasn't it?
1,000 to 2,000 barrels of production per year. Yeah, they won 3 solo medals and a collaboration medal with Narrow Path. Third Eye is such a great brewery. Kelly Montgomery, the head of brewing ops there, he won a bunch of medals with Brink before he moved over to Third Eye. His beers are great. I don't like to give anybody like a superlative, but like if you're looking for somebody to brew you a milk stout in particular, and you're not calling Kelly, like, good Lord. I mean, that dude's got that style dialed in, and he's killer at a bunch of other ones too. So sure. Yeah, I love Third Eye. They're doing such good work down there.
We can give them special props again just because they won in their category. Because you're dealing with all breweries within the state of Ohio, you really can't have a favorite, can you, necessarily?
We joke that they're all our children. As it turns out, I have 430 children in Ohio. So everybody does something exceptionally well. Whether that's a certain style of beer or the service you provide or the ambiance that you have or your community outreach, everyone does something really, really well. That's how you have to differentiate yourself in the market now. It used to be, before there were so many breweries, you could just make good beer and that was enough. But now I mean, you really you have to go above and beyond in many different aspects of your business and excel at least one of those things.
Yes. But I always thought that if you had three different things, you had a good venue, you had, good beer, and you had good food, three legs of your stool to sit on, you're probably going to be pretty stable. And if you're a little off on one of those, you could probably survive. But if you're missing one of those, then it's going to be tough to maintain your place in the market.
Yeah, kind of hit the nail on the head there. Breweries have to compete with every other kind of hospitality business. And we've been pretty lucky up to this point that breweries are delivering the kind of experiences that people are looking for. Everything is a choice. You have to decide, am I going to go to the bar down the street? Am I going to go to the restaurant across town? Am I going to go to the brewery? Am I going to go to the baseball game? Like, everything's a choice.
Yes.
So the more consistently you can offer the kind of experience that people are looking for, the better off you'll be.
Indeed. And I was pretty naive when I first started down my ale trail. I did a lot of brewery hopping in Michigan. The company I work for is based in Michigan. I've got family on the west side of Michigan. And so Grand Rapids is a huge hotbed of breweries in Michigan. For a while, I thought, okay, Columbus is the only hotbed of breweries in the state of Ohio. But then as I started expanding my searches a little bit, I'm like, Cincinnati's got a pretty big brewery scene, and it's grown a lot since I started looking into that. Cleveland, has a pretty solid beer scene. Toledo, I mean, up and coming, that area's got, a number of 20 or 25 breweries in the greater Toledo area. I would say the Midwest in general, I think if I was going to generalize this, I think the Midwest is doing a great job with craft breweries.
I agree 100%. Just the growth in numbers over the last 10 years has been phenomenal. When Mary started as executive director of OCBA 10 years ago, there were 58 breweries in the state, and there are now 430. The number growth on paper is astounding. We obviously are in kind of the maturity part of the industry growth curve. So the astronomical growth in market share, dollar share, number of breweries, like that growth will taper. It'll taper in any industry that is maturing. Nobody expects double-digit growth in market share anymore. It hasn't been that way for several years now. But what we have is an industry that continues to show growing economic impact in the state, as well as garnering more and more awards and a higher reputation as a destination for craft beer. Obviously, I'm a little biased. I'm going to say Ohio's beers are better than most of the other beers in the Midwest, but I saw some random radio station social media post about Cleveland's Oktoberfest being voted the number one Oktoberfest in the nation, like the festival, the celebration. And the morning radio host was astounded that Ohio would bring home an honor like that because, according to them, we're not known for craft beer, but Michigan is. I'm not sure what industry you've been watching, but we're doing all right. I think we're currently 6th in craft beer production. The 430 breweries is in the top 10 as far as numbers go. The industry here is doing pretty well on the whole as a maturing industry. And, Michigan's great. Like it's not the end of November unless you're listening to this later. So we can still say that Michigan's okay as far as beers are concerned. Football's of whatever. That's a different thing. Yeah, comparing Ohio to other states, we're really on par with some of the bigger, more prestigious craft beer states. Michigan, New York, North Carolina. We're right on par with a lot of those.
I would agree. I think that Ohio has kind of come in under the radar into the top 10, really. You and I met at one of my favorite summer events, which is the Northwest Ohio Barbecue over at Fort Crick in Defiance, Ohio. At that time, you were bringing some awareness to a really important issue that's facing the Ohio craft breweries today. Can you please share a little bit more about that issue?
Sure, yeah. The industry is, as we said, it's gotten to a maturity point. It's a healthy industry. It's still a growing industry, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't still issues that can make the industry better and can make an impact in Ohio communities. And one of the things that we've been pushing for the last couple of years is reform to Ohio's franchise law, technically the Ohio Alcoholic Beverages Franchise Act. This is a law that was passed in 1974 that governs the relationships between breweries and beer wholesalers who then sell beer to your local grocery stores, convenience stores, restaurants, sports venues, whatever. So those intermediary wholesalers, in 1974, when this law was written, there were a couple hundred of them in the state of Ohio, all relatively small mom and pop type family businesses, right? And there were about 100 total breweries in the entire country. Most of them, the big names of the time, and some that still survived, right? Your Anheuser-Busch's, your Miller's, your Coors, larger breweries like that. The wholesalers primarily distributed one of those breweries' products. So, this family business sells Budweiser to the bars and restaurants in their county. And what happens when you have one very large company with practically unlimited resources and bargaining power in their relationship is if they decided, like, hey, I don't like the service I'm getting from you, small family distributor, I'm going to pull my business and go to somebody else. That small business then goes out of business because that's their product. That's, the one thing that they're selling in the market, right? So wholesalers got together in 1974, wrote franchise law into the Ohio Revised Code. And basically what it says in a nutshell is that breweries who enter into distribution contracts with a wholesaler enter into those contracts in perpetuity. So that if Anheuser-Busch wants to pull their business, they can't. They're locked in there. They have to show some good cause that is not defined in law and adjudicate their way out of a contract. For a big brewery, that's not necessarily impossible. It does make it more difficult, but it's not impossible for them to get out of that contract. And in reality, the way it was meant to work is the big brewery would say, hey, I want you to do this for me. The small business would say, I would love to do that for you, but that's not within our means. What can we do for you? And then they come to a resolution, like within the bounds of their contract or amending the contract as written, so that they can have a working relationship forever that, works for the brewery and works for the wholesaler. That was 1974 when there were 200 breweries in the country. Fast forward 50 years, there are over 9,000 breweries in the country, most of them making very small amounts of beer. And in Ohio, there are now about 24 wholesale businesses remaining. In the last 50 years, they've become so valuable because of franchise law, because of these evergreen, unbreakable contracts, that those wholesale businesses become super, super valuable. They become assets in and of themselves. And for a distributor to grow, they essentially have to buy another distributor. So you go from 200 in 1974 to about 24 in 2023. And it's literally because the larger wholesalers just keep buying up smaller competitors and getting new territories and new brands through acquisition. So 50 years after this law that was meant to protect small businesses, the wholesalers are the huge, powerful businesses, and the independent breweries that they represent are the small family businesses. So it's a complete 180 in how the industry works. But the law still applies from 1974 and gives the wholesaler an unfair advantage in their relationships. Because if you make 500 barrels of beer a year, you're a very small business. A very large wholesaler in the state of Ohio sold to a private equity firm a couple of years ago for north of $1 billion. These are huge companies that don't need protection from small mom and pop businesses that are just trying to grow a little bit. It's an unfair situation for a small brewery to be locked into these contracts, because what ends up happening is the large wholesaler doesn't have any real incentive to fully back the sales of these small breweries and to provide the service that they contract for. This is my favorite way to describe how franchise law works. Let's say you own a house. Maintaining a house takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of different people and skills. You've got an electrician, maybe you've got a landscaper, you've got a plumber, you've got all kinds of people who are helping you that you pay to maintain your home, right? But there's a law in the book that says when you pick a plumber, that's your plumber for the rest of the time that you own your house. So let's say your toilet starts leaking. You call your plumber out, and while your plumber is trying to fix your toilet, he breaks the pipe, and there's water going everywhere. Basement's starting to flood. You're like, hey, dude, plumber, fix this leak. And he's like, things didn't really work out the way I wanted. I'll come back later and take care of it. Meanwhile, your house is flooding, and the only person that you're allowed to pay to fix it won't do it, right? So you try and fix it yourself, and your plumber gets word of that and says, well, I got to take you to court because legally you have to pay me to fix your leak. In what world does that make any sense at all?
You're exactly right. It does not make any sense.
It makes no sense whatsoever. So that's essentially how this whole thing works. That's how these relationships can go. Some wholesalers are providing really good service to their breweries. Some breweries are very happy with the service they're getting from their wholesalers. Conversations that we've had with breweries, most of them have at least one critical issue with their wholesaler that is not being addressed. When they take it to the wholesaler to fix it, they say, we'll look at it. We'll see what we can do. And nothing happens. It doesn't get any better. And you can't leave. The only way out of a distribution contract in Ohio is if the wholesaler sells to another business, if the brewery sells to another business, or if one of them goes out of business entirely. In the contracts, the wholesaler can sell your rights to another wholesaler and give your brewery, I think it's supposed to be 90 days written notice. In reality, what happens is a wholesaler will sell to another wholesaler and say, this is your wholesaler now. And if you don't like it, figure it out. And then you have to court a new wholesaler in the territory where they represent you. Our breweries get traded like baseball cards among wholesalers, but the breweries themselves have no leverage and no rights to get out of a contract that doesn't work for them.
The other thing that's dangerous about that, I think, is that then your distributors get to pick and choose basically what they distribute and what they don't distribute. So if it's, hazy IPAs are popular this year, then they could just choose to distribute the hazy IPAs that come from, whatever breweries that I'm representing. That really limits what me as a craft beer lover, as an end consumer, what I can have access to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. From the consumer side of this, the distributor essentially gets to decide what they want to sell to a retailer from their portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're getting an incentive from Anheuser-Busch or a Miller Coors or another large player to prioritize their product over a smaller competitor, they're going to do it. That is a behavior that is legal in Ohio for a sales incentive from a brewery to a distributor. Small breweries can't play that game. Like, they don't have the funds to say, here's the sales incentive to push my product. The distributor knows that if they sign up a new brewery, those brand rights, depending on whether or not they were already distributed in that territory, they might be getting those brand rights for nothing if there's no track record in that territory. They might spend 6 months to try and build the sales up in that territory. But then if something new and shiny comes along, or if another brewery says, hey, here's a better incentive to sell this product, that brewery's brand could literally just disappear from the shelves because the distributor decides not to carry it or not to offer it. There have been situations where retailers ask for specific beer in a distributor's portfolio, and they say, no, we don't have it. It's not in stock. And it's sitting on the dock at the brewery waiting for the distributor to pick it up.
Or they'll say, you need to order 24 cases of it in order for me to give it to you. I've had that happen before. One of the local businesses here in the town that I live in, he would look at his list and he'd say, hey, is there anything on here that you'd like me to order for you? I'm like, yeah, sure. And there were a few things that I would want him to get. And he's like, well, I really can't do that because they want me to order 4 cases. And if it's not going to sell, it's just going to sit on my shelf. And I can't do that.
Right.
I totally understand.
Last call.
It's nearly time to wrap things up, but first, one more for the road. This episode, I'm drinking Simcoe from Evil Twin Brewing in Brooklyn, New York. From the brewer, Evil Twin Brewing presents Hop for a Better Future, a double IPA series featuring rotating hops. This initial entry is brewed with Simcoe. Without further delay, well, this is an 8% ABV double IPA. Evil Twin is one of those breweries that puts out a lot of big, unique, flavorful beers. I've had a dozen or so cans from them over the years, ranging from sour IPAs to imperial stouts and everything in between. Most of these were acquired through Tavour, but now my favorite bottle shop, Harvest in Holland, carries Evil Twin. So I poured this out into a snifter glass. It pours a straw to pale gold color with a fine white head. It's a gorgeous looking beer. It is hazy, hazy, hazy. It's got a thin, fine white head. When I started pouring this into the glass, all I was getting was massive citrus, like fresh squeezed orange juice. So appealing. Even now, just holding the glass in front of me, I'm getting that strong orange juice kind of aroma to it. It's fantastic. First sip impression, it's smooth on the front end. Definitely a lot of citrus here. Finishes on the end with a little bit more of a bitter citrus peel, almost an earthiness to it as well. But it is super smooth. It has a medium-bodied mouthfeel. In fact, just looking at the side of the snifter glass, I can see particles kind of floating mid-suspension in the liquid. So I know it's definitely got a little bit more a viscous kind of nature to it. So Simcoe is one of those hops. Typically, you're going to use it for bittering, but if you were to use Simcoe as a dry hop, you would definitely get a little bit more orange forward notes on the nose, which is something that I'm getting here. So I suspect that they not only brewed this in the boil with Simcoe hops, but they also dry hopped it as well, either at flame out or perhaps just prior to fermentation to get a little bit more of that orange forward aroma. This is yet another great installment of beers from Evil Twin. Most of the dozen or so that I've had over the years have all been top notch, and personally I've thought very highly of them. This one is not any different, though it's a little bit more of maybe a middle of the road beer for Evil Twin. It is still a solid example of what they can do with a single hop presentation in a beer. It is delicious. I was expecting a little bit more, maybe earthiness, a little bit more piney flavor to it, but they have done it very well, and this is very, very tasty. I can't say anything more. I give this one 4 tasters out of 5 on the flight board. Cheers, Evil Twin Brewing. If you've got a beer you'd like me to drink and describe, leave a comment below. If you're a brewer and have one in mind, direct message me on Instagram and let's see what we can do. That's all for this episode of the 5 Beer Plan. With so many podcasts out there, thanks for choosing to listen to mine. Join me next time as I kick off my homebrewing project and bring my conversation with Justin Hemminger from the Ohio Craft Brewers Association to a close. Remember to hit the subscribe button to be notified of new episodes. I'd love to hear from you, so please follow me on Instagram, 5 Beer Plan 2022, and leave a comment to let me know what one of your favorite beers with Simcoe is. Be sure to support your local breweries, choose your beers wisely, and drink them responsibly. Until next time, keep walking your ale trail, and stay thirsty, my friends.